This is a box that shows the customers on the top, the business segment, residential, industrial, and transportation, and all the major energy input elements from coal, renewables, all the way to oil. What is important here is while oil can be used in all three segments, the forms of energy that are used in the other two cannot be used in transportation. There's a wall preventing the ability to mix, which is often called the characteristic of fungibility between different forms of energy. The most important thing we need to do is to transform the energy industry. Not a minor task, $7 trillion industry, in such a way that energy sources can be fully fungible. And what we need for that is transportation that joins the other industrial sector, the industrial and residential sector, in sharing the characteristic of flexibility in being able to use different sources of energy. And that full fungibility, which is a necessity to be able to adapt to unpredictable changes in the energy environment, depends on the introduction of electricity in transportation. Electricity has an additional factor that is in the era of globalization and both going from the source of energy to the highest bidder in the world, has another characteristic. It is much easier to rely on your local resources if they come to you in the form of electricity, because electricity, so to say, is sticky to the locality where the source of energy was produced and converted into energy. I think most of us would agree with what I described so far, perhaps not exactly the language or the urgency, but even if you don't, the real question is not to for an agreement on that, but to figure out how do we move forward in this. And I apologize for a pedantic side trip. I want to provide a couple of definitions. For the purpose of this talk, electric car is something that always relies on electricity for its movement. I came up with an unfortunate sounding name, which is only comparable in unfortunate sounding equivalent. I call it dual fuel car because it can use electricity first and gasoline after. It doesn't have any electricity. And I came up with it because I dislike PHEV even more. But let's not get stuck on it. The equivalence having been established, I want to move on and give you a factoid. By every statistic, something like 80% of U.S. drivers drive fewer than 40 miles per day. Not every day, but on average. Consequently, if you magically could convert the fleet of cars into a dual fuel operation with 40-mile electric range, the average car would cut gasoline used by more than half. A corollary of this factoid is if you converted just the 100 million large form factor cars on U.S. roads, which are the low end of mileage, that conversion alone would save half of our oil imports and would create a completely different dynamic in the world market for the rest of it. So I would like to propose that our focus, for all the reasons I talked about, is simplified, and we think of job one, the task that we have to do, even if we don't do anything else, is to take a large step toward introducing electricity into transportation. And because of the factories that I propose, I would like to take aim at the large form factor cars that I can come up with TLAs as well. I call them PSVs for pickups, SUVs, and vans. Large form factor, space for retrofits, space for batteries, and lousy mileage. And aim to bring them as a fleet to the 40 miles per day electric range to achieve that half reduction. All of this is summarized there. This is a very hard task. Somebody that knows this area a whole lot better than me said it's borderline undoable. I like that. Otherwise, it's not worth doing. We have issues everywhere. We have issues with infrastructure, battery costs, and carbon emission, and most importantly, with ramping up the numbers. Let me address each of those for just a second. We have enough physical reserve in the grid infrastructure to allow us to convert 50 to 60 million cars at the intersection of those two lines to gas vehicles, rather, large vehicles, before we run into physical infrastructure limitations. The way we do that is we use the grid when people are asleep. Cars can become a distributed storage on the grid and even out the operation of the grid, which most things, when we operate in a steady level, operate more efficiently. Battery costs are a clear problem. Battery volume production is a clear problem. But, I come from an industry, and a lot of us here come from an industry where we have gotten used to a steady reduction with experience, with volume, with technology of the unit cost. I'm referring to Moore's law. And if we look at the data retrospectively, unbeknownst to most people, battery cost seems to follow a less aggressive Moore's law, less steep decline on a semi-log chart than transistors do, but a decline nonetheless. We need to accelerate that decline because if I take as a target a pickup truck, the most popular pickup truck being the Ford F-150 in the United States, for that to have a 40-mile electric range, that chart goes out far too long, 5-6 years. But I don't think we have spent the kind of energy on better technology and better volume-related cost improvements as we have in the semiconductor industry. And I'm full confident that that would introduce a break in that line, making it more steep.